This is Don at Airbrush Technique magazine. Over the last 5 or 6 years of running airbrushTechnique.com, the magazine support forum, the airbrush support forum, some of the most common questions we hear is how do I take my airbrush apart to clean it, or how do I put it back together after I clean it. So in this little video we're going to go over the Master Series G44 airbrush, how to take it apart. Pull your back handle off. It just unscrews. Put it in a bowl so you don't lose it. Don't do it over the sink so stuff goes down the drain. Take the needle chucking nut off. Back the spring guide out by unscrewing it. Pull the needle chucking guide out and the spring. Pull your trigger out. And there's this little piece that goes behind the trigger. Pull your air cap off and the needle tip protector. Air cap, and that will give you access to the tip. The tip comes off with a little tiny wrench. You just unscrew it. And when you put it back on, you just screw it in, but make sure you don't over tighten it because you'll break it off. Take the air cap off. Clean it all. To put it back together again, make sure the seal's in there. Make sure the seal is on the front part of this. We're going to put this back in by simply screwing it back in. Hand tight is usually good enough. You don't want to wrench on it real hard. Put your air cap back on. Put your tip back in as I showed you before with a little wrench. Put the air cap back on. Hand tight is usually good enough. Tip guard back on. Next is the tricky part. As you can see, this little part here has an arch to it. This little arch needs to go against the back of the trigger. What I do is turn it at a 45-degree angle, put it in, and lean it against the back of the airbrush. Like that. To put the trigger in, this little post needs to fit down in the air valve guide. It's a little tricky getting in there. It can be done with a little patience. You'll see a hole in the airbrush inside where this fits right down in there on the air valve guide, or air valve. Once the trigger's in there, you push down on it, it should spring back up on you once the trigger is in there properly. Now simply lean the airbrush forward and let that little round piece come back against the trigger. If you can see, the back of it's right against the trigger. That's the arch part. Put your needle chucking guide back in. It's slotted. It only goes in one way. Make sure you get it in there right. Put the spring back on. Chucking guide. Screws in. Before you put the needle on, super lube on it again. Put the needle in until you feel it hit the tip. Don't force it, just feel it hit the tip. Put your chucking nut back on. Put the back handle back on. Make sure that this gasket is there. Now as you push down on the trigger, it should spring back up. As you pull back on the trigger, the needle should move back and forth. That's how you take your Master G44 apart and put it back together after cleaning it. This is Don at Airbrush Technique Magazine. If you should need any more assistance with airbrush related questions or problems, please stop by our airbrush support forum, the magazine support forum, at airbrushmag.com. Thank you.